everybody? Everybody can hear me okay? Loud enough? Great. Well, I hope you guys are all having an amazing time. I am. I'm really excited to be here. I think this is my 4th or 5th Boston Fermentation Festival. So I usually come down every year. This is the first year that I'm sort of like getting to take the stage. So I'm super excited about that. Welcome to Miso. Just really fast, how many of you in the room are already fermenting things? Most of you. How many people are making miso? Okay, all right. So we're going to cover a lot in this class. I wanted to really, when I was thinking about what I wanted to do, I wanted to keep it really simple so you feel like you can go home and make miso, because I get a lot of emails from people being like, miso seems so complicated, and it's really not. So I have pared this back. So I'm going to take you guys through some basic bean miso today. I'm also going to take you guys through some steps for making nut misos. So if you want to experiment with nuts and seeds and kind of get your brains thinking about other ways that you can use miso and koji sort of in your future worlds. And miso is hands down one of my favorite things to ferment, to eat, to make, and to the degree that my cat's name is Koji, which we'll talk more about. We say she chose that name because we kept calling her 50 other things, and Koji was the thing she responded to, and I was like, see, it was meant to be. So, anyway, so just a historical sort of fun fact. A lot of people, does anybody know how old fermentation is? Yes, who's brave?
5,000, 6,000.
5,000, 6,000? Keep going.
40,000.
40,000. Don't be like the kid in my class a couple weeks ago who said infinity and ruined it for everybody. 10,000. We know that fermentation is over 10,000 years old. I think that goes to tell us a lot sort of about fermentation as a preservation technique. But also we know that miso is between 14,000 around 14,000 BC is when it's kind of like as far back as we sort of dated, and we sort of know a little bit about the history of miso. And what we do know actually is we think that miso actually, and there's a lot of I thinks around this, but that it originated in China, migrated to Japan. Also, miso is common in Korea. So there's a lot of different sort of miso, practices in different parts of Asia. They're all a little bit different, and I think that's really cool. And the oldest miso in the world that we know about is, I think, somewhere around 150 years old. And I always like to say miso kind of matures like wine. And so, I'm hoping if you get into this practice, you will start stashing away hiding miso around your apartment, which is what I do in Brooklyn. And I have like a 5-year miso under my bed somewhere. There's like another tucked in a closet, So you're going to get super creative with this. And I think, the best way to sort of explain miso is, you go to the market, you go to buy miso, and it's like, you see like the sweet miso, and the yellow miso, and the white miso, and the red miso, and you're like, what the hell does all this mean, right? So I just like to kind of, to me the big difference is really just time and temperature. And it's a big kind of gauge of sort of these different variations of miso. And some misos, go for, they're less mature, they're like a younger miso, and it might be less than a year, or 3 months, or 6 months. And then we have other misos that, just keep going, and they become these really mature misos. Again, all of them super yummy, most of them. And, and then other times we kind of have ones that, mature and change and become sort of like wine in this sort of amazing thing. Another thing that I think is really fantastic about miso is just the health benefits. I think we all have probably learned from being fermenters or being at this festival that nutrition is a huge component of fermentation, and some of the health benefits of miso making is just like that we have a lot more B vitamins. It's a really great source actually of like vegetarian, vegan protein and amino acids. Obviously pre-digestion, probiotics, all that magic. But also miso is actually known to help carry heavy metal toxins and radiation out of the body. So if you're avoiding a zombie apocalypse situation, or you find yourself in something, eat your miso. And it's also just, like I said, really high in minerals. I think it's a really amazing superfood. And making miso is easy. And again, like I kind of had said before, I get a lot of people coming, like, Cheryl, miso, it's so complicated. I'm too scared to do miso, but I really want to simplify it for you guys. When I started making miso, I was totally kind of thrown back by the process, and I was like, oh, Koji, I'm making the beans, and then I don't really do the soy thing, and I don't do the gluten thing, and there was a lot of things. But I really went back and sort of simplified it for myself, and over the years, I really started focusing on making soy-free misos. Sometimes I make them gluten-free, sometimes I don't. And just keeping it really, really, really simple. So there are trays of misos. Can we bring those around? So I did bring some misos for tasting today, and then we're going to kind of jump into sort of the how-tos. Today there's 2 misos, and I'm going to send these around so you guys can kind of smell them and see what they're like. The first one is, this is an orchid bean miso. I've been using a lot of heirloom beans in my fermenting. Really, really into it. So these are orchid beans. They look like little free willies in real life, like little whales. And this is made with a barley Koji. This is a 1-year fermented miso. And then we'll send this one around too. So let's start here, and then it can kind of like, I don't know, and we'll make it over there. Okay. All right. And then the second one I brought for you guys today that you're going to get to try is a calypso bean miso. Calypso beans are really rad. This one is with a rice Koji. It has garlic, red chilies, and leeks. It's a 1.5 years fermented. So I'll pass this around if you want to smell it. There'll be trays coming around so you can get your umami kick on. Koji? So Koji is mold inoculated rice. We're going to talk about that here in a second. So yeah. So these are just some misos. Taste and enjoy. The barley one is not gluten-free, so if you're celiac or something, just be warned. Everything is soy-free though, and nut-free and all that stuff. So, yeah. It's fun watching everybody sneezes. So basics of Koji making, miso making. You really only need 3 ingredients for a really simple miso. One being beans. Traditionally, miso would be made with soybeans. I always encourage people get non-GMO soybeans if you're going to do a soy miso, but you can use other beans as well. Today we're going to use azuki beans for this demonstration, and then you want to use what's called Koji. Now Koji is rice that goes through a process where it's steamed, and it's inoculated with a mold spore called Aspergillus oryzae. It's a fungus. Do not be alarmed. And it looks like this, and I'm actually going to send some Koji around because this is a really amazing, culture for all kinds of fermentation. Koji is amazing. You can use it to make amazake and soy sauce and mirin and rice vinegar. It's not just for miso. You can cure meat in it. You can make pickles with it. It's like this. It's magic. So I'm going to send these around as well. We'll do one on each side. You can totally taste it if you want to. So if you want to smell it, you want to take a little morsel and hold it in your hand and eat it, you totally can. It's totally safe. So we'll pass that around as well so you guys kind of get the sense of it. This is fresh Koji. So, 2 things to sort of note is, you have your beans, but also Koji comes in 2 forms. I find it easier to find it dehydrated. Some companies that sells amazing Koji, actually South River Miso here in Massachusetts, sells amazing dried Koji. Cold Mountain is another company that makes Koji. I don't know if you guys know how Sunrise Marts here in Boston. Well, we have it in New York. But any kind of Japanese market will likely have Koji on hand. Cultures for Health, gem cultures. You can find a local Koji maker, or you can try to do it yourself. It's possible. But you want, Koji. Now, the Koji I'm sending around, again, is fresh Koji. It has not been dehydrated. So this is super fresh. My friend Jonathan whipped this batch up for me right before I left for the festival. So it's been, it's 48 hours of awesomeness. It has a nice odor and stuff. So you can work with it either way. Good so far? Yes. Questions? We're good? Okay, we're going straight through. So basic miso making. So what my steps for doing miso is you're going to decide, number 1, what kind of beans do you want to use? Now, I will encourage you to use, Azuki beans, chickpeas are really good. Cranberry beans are amazing. You have the calypso beans, orchid beans, any kind of heirloom bean is pretty amazing. I haven't had as much success with black beans or pinto beans. So kind of think about your bean, flavors, I guess, when you pick. Another thing I will just encourage you to do is try to get the freshest beans you can. You don't want to use canned beans. I will encourage you to get dry beans, and if you're cooking them for 45 minutes and you've done them in an Instant Pot or a crock pot and they're like still too hard, they're probably just too dry and been sitting for a long time. So just something to sort of factor in and think about when you're making your miso. And then what you want to do is you're going to soak your beans, which is just an amazing practice, and then you're going to cook them. But you want to make sure you cook them till they're al dente, just like you would a pasta, So it's like there's a little bit of stiffness, but they're soft. You don't want them to be totally soggy. I have made misos with soggy beans. It works okay, but the al dente ones definitely are a little bit more successful in my book. So you want to cook them until they're like a nice al dente. And then what you're going to do is you're going to separate them. You're going to strain out your liquid, but don't throw it away. Don't dump it down the sink. Save this bean liquid. We're going to use this later. All right? So you're going to do bean liquid. You're going to save your beans, and you're just going to cool it down. Because heat and fermentation is a nightmare. It kills off everything, but we want to grow stuff. So all you're going to do is sort of, basically just unexpected. And then all you're going to do is cool it down. Now, what I like to do is, again, once I've separated my bean liquid, I've separated my beans, is you're just going to get there and you're going to mash them. So if you've had a really shitty day at work, the subway was bad, subway was crazy, you just take it out of the beans. But you want to mash them up. And the reason you want to mash them up is you don't want them to be mush. This isn't like a mashed potato situation. But you want to make sure that you break the hulls of every bean. Does everybody know what the hull of a bean is? Okay, it's like the little kind of like crevice, nook. And the reason we want to do that is because when we go to add our Koji, we want that Aspergillus to get into everything. That's how we're going to start the fermentation process. All right? So I'm just going to mash while we talk. Cool? Usually while I do this, what I like to do is I like to take my Koji. Now dried Koji, you might need a little bit more of the bean liquid than the fresh Koji. So they function a little bit differently. Since I'm using fresh Koji, I'm not going to wet it yet. But usually if I had dried Koji, I would put it in a separate bowl and I'd pour a little bit of bean liquid in there and just not kind of hydrate it and let it suck it up a little bit. You don't want it to be soup, you want it to be wet though, So you don't want to be like super cooling in the side of the bowl, you just want to wet it well. And the reason you want to make sure it's wet enough is because you don't want to end up with dry miso. I had a friend of mine come visit from Chicago, and she was like, all right, brought me all these amazing ferments, and then she's like, I need you to check out my miso. And she pulls out this baggie and it looked like a dry brownie. And I was like, yeah, that's too dry. She just didn't add enough liquid to it, So do yourself the favor if you think it's not wet enough. I like to add a little bit more liquid and let it be a little bit too wet and then not enough, and then I wait a year and a half, and I crack it open and it's like a dry brownie in a jar. You don't want that. So I like to say add a little bit more water than you think you need to. And if a few of the beans don't get mashed, it's not the end of the world. Don't stress out. It's all good. All right, so I'm just mashing these. And then what I like to do is, so what I did was I actually measured out 2 cups of beans, all right, to start. And typically for a miso, I usually like to do a 2-to-1 ratio, beans to Koji, okay? So I'm actually gonna take a cup of Koji.
When you cook the beans, can you add salt so far?
I haven't added any salt yet, but I'm going to. And then I'm just gonna wet this a little bit, all right? Just kind of let it soak it up.
Say the ratio, guys.
I like to do the 2-to-1 ratio, Koji to beans. So in this case, I did 2 cups of beans, and I did 1 cup of Koji.
2 cups of dried beans when you started, or 2 cups?
I do them wet.
Okay.
I usually do it like cook them and then, because every bean is a little bit different. So I usually do it when it's wet.
How long do you soak the beans before?
I usually do it overnight. Yeah, like around 8 hours, give or take. But I usually just put them in to soak overnight, like when I'm sleeping, and then the next day I throw them in an Instant Pot or yeah.
When you're
I mean,
cooking the beans, do you want to overcook them, undercook them, cook
You
them?
wanna undercook them a little bit. You really want to go for an al dente. You don't want them to be, again, I've made misos where beans have gotten a little bit soggy and it works, but I found they're just a lot better if I can do that al dente. So again, I'm wetting this, but it's not like I'm pulling a ton of liquid. But when I go like this, it's wet. Alright? So we're just letting it soak it up.
So, cooked oatmeal texture, more or less?
Kind of, yeah. I would say oatmeal, kind of a loose oatmeal is good, I mean, all that's going to happen is if it's a little too wet, you're just going to get a little bit more tamari in the end. Or it might be a little harder to like strain it out, so it might be a little bit loose for a paste, but still not the end of the world. I'd rather you have it a little too wet while you're kind of feeling it out. And the thing is like I can sit here and give you like ratio, but every bean reacts a little bit different. So I feel like it's kind of unfair of me to give you guys like par ratios, right? When it's gonna all react a little bit differently. And also based on weather, humidity, this, that, all the things that we deal with in fermentation, all right? So what I like to do is once I've sort of mashed all my beans up, and I've hydrated my Koji, salt. Now, keep in mind, you want to err on, you don't want to like sucker punch somebody with salt, but these are ferments that are going to be sitting for a much longer time, than maybe your sauerkraut or a yogurt or a whatever. Or not a yogurt, but something else that you're making pickles. So you want to make sure you're actually salting this relatively well. I like to suggest salting things till they taste like the ocean. So if you are willing to taste test what you are making, I think that's a really good gauge for making miso. So I'm going to I'm just going to eyeball this. I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons to start. And I'm going to mix it in. And if my beans feel a little bit dry, which right now to me, my beans feel a little bit dry, but they've been sitting, you cooked these like earlier today, you just add a little bit of liquid, all right? Again, this is going a little bit more on feel.
What kind of salt do you use?
Non-iodized salt, any kind of non-iodized sea salt. So you could use, non-iodized kosher salt. I'm sorry?
Do you use Himalayan?
Himalayan, Celtic, any of that.
Do you use tap water or do you want to use non-chlorinated?
It's such a big debate. I filter usually at home. Today I'm using tap water. I've made many misos using tap water and I haven't had any problems. So, you do you. Other people might debate that. All right. Okay, so mash. I'm actually going to throw 4 beans in here. And then you got your hydrated Koji, the beans, again, nice and wet, nice and mashed. And all you're going to do is combine these together. So now you just have like this big pot of beans and rice. Beans and rice. Okay. So again, not too dry, but if you guys can see, it's loose, right? So that's what I can show you. Make sure it's salted well. If you want to give it a taste. Is it salty enough? I'm actually going to add a little bit more salt to this. It's going to have some sweetness because of the Koji, but again, you want to make sure you have enough salt. So go for that kind of salty ocean, a salty potato chip, something of that nature. How are we doing? We're good? Everybody's following? Okay, love it. Okay, nice mix. This is also the point where I would suggest that if you want to add other things to your miso, this is the good point to do it. So whether you're going to add, one of my favorite go-to punches is chopped leeks, garlic, and red chili flakes. I think that's sort of my favorite go-to miso flavor. Any kind of hearty green I have found works really well. So if you want to do collard greens, or like I did a black eyed pea and collard green, red chili, and garlic miso that turned out actually pretty cool. I've had a little bit of luck with some carrots and like some other unusual things. I like to keep it really simple. The other thing I'm going to suggest to you is stay away from powdered spices. If you're going to use spices, buy them whole and like crack them a little bit in like a mortar and pestle. And I found that to be way more successful in my miso making. Yeah, but don't go a bit like, ooh, turmeric, I'm just going to throw a bunch of powder or whatever, because it's going to taste like chocolate or it's good stuff. So that's my suggestion. I'm actually just going to do a plain old straight zucchini miso today. So if you don't have other things,
Can you do that in your blender?
you know, I've had a lot of people ask me about blending. My thing is you're going to blend or food process it later on, optionally. So I am not into blending or food processing anything in the beginning. I kind of go old school and don't do that. I know a couple people who like that method, but it's not that way. And also, like, what I found is, you know, you guys saw the little jars of miso that went around. Like, one of those was like really, I like went ahead and food processed it, and it was pretty pasty. But the other ones, you guys noticed it was a little bit chunky. That chunkiness is sort of like the end product anyway. So, you know, I really enjoyed using it in its kind of real state. And I enjoy food processing it and blending it up later on in the end. And that works out really well, too. All right, jars. Now, you can use a ball jar, you can use a ceramic crock. I know people use plastic buckets. I'm not the biggest fan of plastic, but it'll work. So you know, choose what your vessel's going to be. Don't ferment in metal. Metal is reactive. So you know, don't think you're going to have much success that way. But I like ball jars. They hold up really well. They're easy to store. They're relatively cheap, and for something that's going to be sitting for so long, I'm cool to donate a case of ball jars to my cause. So what I just did was I just put bean liquid in here. And then what you're going to do is you're actually going to salt your jar. You want everything to be touched with salt. The sides, the bottoms, everything. Because remember, salt keeps out the bad stuff and helps us grow the good stuff. So, you know, get it nice and foggy. Alright, good. And then you're going to pack your jar. Now, another thing you might want to add to this is seaweed. You know, if you want to do like kelp or wakame, adults, bladder wax, some kind of like, you know, really well sourced, you know, seaweed from Maine or someplace that probably isn't being affected by like something like Fujimara. I will say a little seaweed is really lovely in the misos as well. And then you're just going to pack your jar. Now what I like to usually do is I like to put like a hand towel or something down and I sort of tap my jar out. You don't want any big air bubbles in this because big air bubbles can be trouble. Just, so usually what I do is I'll sort of tap it out, try to get as much, you know, air bubbles as I can out of my jar. You know, so get a good layer, check it out. You know, there are going to be little air bubbles. You're not going to be able to get rid of everything, but try to get rid of the big guys, all right? And this is looking pretty good. So what you want to do next, you're going to sprinkle the top with salt. All right, do a nice generous layer. And then what I personally like to do is I either take wax paper and cut it out and kind of put it in the top of the miso, or what I'll do is take seaweed and sort of wet it and pack it around the top of the miso. And what that does is, you know, this is going to be sitting for a year. If you get any funk, I'd rather it grow on a piece of wax paper or on a piece of, you know, seaweed that's in my ferment than into my yield, right? Or like what I'm going to get out. So I usually put like a little layer of something and put my lid on it, throw the date on it, and what's in it? Cool, dark place. Now, in fermentation, and in miso specifically, I'm just going to wash my hands here. Summertime, not talk away from you guys. Summertime sort of becomes like trickle time in fermentation in miso. So let's say you decide, I'm going to start my miso in January, which is traditionally, misos are usually started in the winter. What you want to do is like January's month, February, March, April, May, but when you hit summer, June, again, it becomes becomes like double time. So June's like 2 months, July is 2 months, August is 2 months. So by September, you have a 1 year miso. It's technically only been 9 months, but you have what's called 1 year miso. So it's something to sort of keep in mind. So usually like in the winter, like every January, my friend Erin and I have a ginormous miso making extravaganza. We order pounds and pounds and pounds of beans, Koji. We like soak and cook beans and like hook up like a bunch of Instant Pots that we borrow. We do the whole thing, and we sit there and knock out like gallons and gallons and gallons of miso, you know? And I start them in January. That way I know by this time, you know, I have enough miso to get through workshops, clients, my own personal stash, which goes rather fast in our house, and, you know, and then you have it. You know, so it's just sort of thing to sort of think of, you know, sort of keep in mind. Again, if you're going for a 2 year miso, you know, you're gonna fast forward again, it's gonna be done in like June, you know? So just, it's something you're gonna kind of keep in mind when you sort of do your fermenting in miso years. All right, we're cool? Everybody has the process? Simple.
What kind of lid do you put on?
I'm just gonna put a regular ball jar lid on it.
Tight.
I put it on relatively tight, like finger tight. If it's, you know, if you get it, sometimes things get really active. If I get past, just past the curve of a jar, I usually throw something under it. I usually throw some like tin foil and I sort of bend the edges up, and I kind of use it as like a little catcher, because sometimes things do get really active. You don't know, because it's like stuck under your bed or in a closet or wherever, right? And then that way, if you get stuck in this like weird sticky ooziness, you know, you have something that's kind of catching it. So that's what I like to do. I have like milk crates full of misos, and I just put tin foil all around the bottom so it kind of catches any funkadoo that, you know, happens. Yeah.
So with sauerkraut, when I pack, I was like really pushed down. Do you not, it didn't seem like you really did that other than the knocking?
I don't do that, and I have found even like putting a weight, I don't need that. You know, the biggest thing is I kind of knock it just to get any big air bubbles out. But it's a pretty wet thing. It's like I can sit there and push and push and push. It's not really going to do anything. So
do you ever have to go back when it's really active and like, because I've had that with sauerkraut where it bubbles up and I had to re-push.
No.
Okay.
They really do pretty well. You know, don't fill them past the bend of the jar. Put a little something underneath them. But put that wax paper, some seaweed on top, and just leave it. You know, one thing I've always told people in just fermentation in general, I'm like, if you are trying to learn, you know, how or when you like to stop your ferments, you know, I think miso is a good way to like, it's like, well, crack it open at 1 month, smell it, you know, open it at 3 months, you know, smell it. If you're gonna dig in it, like, just dig a little bit under the top layer, but like, don't dig a big well in it. Just take a little taste. Like, it's not gonna hurt you to like necessarily explore it. I wouldn't go do that like all the time and keep digging in it, but if you want to check it out a couple times over the year, give it a go. You know, it's not gonna hurt.
What about the liquid that forms on the top? It forms a liquid.
It forms a liquid, which is, I mean, like the tamari basically. It's the liquid that, you know, which if you have a lot of tamari at the end of the ferment, usually what I do is I'll try to strain it out and I'll throw it like in a stir fry or something, you know, like that.
Or you can blend it? You can, mix it?
You could totally mix it in. Yeah, so if you want to mix it in, just have like a looser, you can. Yeah.
Can you explain the putting the wax paper or seaweed? What was that for?
So it's just to protect the layer. You know, it's like something's sitting for a year. Sometimes you get a little mold or a little bit of funk that grows. It just, all it is giving it something to grow onto, so it's not just growing on your miso yield. So it's just kind of giving you more miso in the end.
What kind of seaweed would you put in like?
Anything hardy, a kelp, a wakami, not a nori. Nori is gonna get soggy and weird. What?
Like a.
Yeah, I would dampen it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like you like push it down on there. Or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't push hard. I just sort of light
Yeah.
and kind of pack it down a little bit. Yeah.
So at the 6th month, you skim off the first layer.
I don't skim anything off. I just leave them until I'm ready to harvest them usually. Yeah. What was your question?
So for a sauerkraut ferment, a lot of times I'll put like a cabbage leaf on top. I guess you could also do like a dark leafy green instead of the wax paper.
You could. I tend to do seaweed or the wax paper, and I've never had problems with like a little bit of like wax paper on there. It's like works really well for me. I don't usually. I haven't done it with a green on top other than like seaweed.
Okay.
Just, you know.
And does it? I know sauerkraut calm use is one of the more common things that you get? Are there common things that you kind of see with this?
I haven't really ever had any common miso, and I've never really seen it. So it might definitely exist, but it's not an experience I've had for sure. Somebody over here had a question. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm not an assistant. How hard do you put the lid on?
Finger tight. So
Okay.
just you don't want to. It's like, especially if it ends up getting sticky, you want to be able to get your lid off later. What I've been doing is, I'll do it finger tight, and what I do is I'll wipe this lid, put it on finger tight, and then again, when I stash it away, put it under some tin foil, and then I just pick up, and usually I rinse it off in the sink a little bit, and it kind of loosens everything. Because sometimes stuff bubbles up, it gets a little sticky, it dries out, it gets a little stuck, but usually it come right off.
And that's loose enough to let some of the liquid out if it wants to come out?
No, I just don't see any reason to fiercely tighten something that I might not be able to get off in a year, especially if it gets a little bit stuck. So I just do a finger tight. Yeah.
So I have dehydrated Koji that I ordered on Amazon. And I'm always like, what? You have to rehydrate it, and it's so complex. And then I drove to Boston to find out. What do you have to do? So what's your experience with rehydrating it?
You don't need to super rehydrate it. You're just gonna wet it, just like I did my Koji. You might have to wet it, it'll suck it right up. You might wet it again a little bit, just to get it a little bit wetter, but that's all you need to do. You don't need to do anything else.
Okay.
You came all the way to Boston and pour beet juice on rice. Yeah.
So you're not soaking the dehydrated Koji, you're just wetting it or?
Yeah, just giving it a little bit of wetness, kind of opening it up a little bit. Yeah, you don't need to you don't want your Koji to be crazy wet. It's if I squeeze it, it might give me some liquid, but if I take it and I push it to the side of the bowl, I don't like a pool of it. There might be a little bit, but you don't want it to be soup. You just want it to be moist, kind of like an oatmeal, which is what somebody said earlier, and that was really great. Right, so many questions. All right, yes, yes, and then yes. Yeah. So making your own Koji, it is a project. It is a little bit of a project. People do it. Basically, the short version of it is you steam rice, brown rice, white rice. You can also do barley. People have done quinoa, buckwheat. You can do other ways to do Koji. And then, what you want to do is sort of steam it till it's al dente, and then you sort of cool it a little bit. You mix in the Aspergillus, and then you kind of go through. There are a lot of people do it different ways. The more traditional way is you mound it in fabric on in wooden trays, and then you sort of spread it and you incubate it, and you kind of keep going through this process. So the idea is that you want it to hang out around 86 degrees is what I think is sort of optimal. Some people like to use oven and just put a little clamp light or something in it. That's what I usually do at home. Also, humidity is a thing, so then I get a water bottle and I spritz in there. It's just, you have to babysit it a little bit. It's a 48-hour sort of babysitting thing. The idea is that heat is sort of creating energy. The fungus is sort of doing its thing, it's spreading. You have to go through that process to have really, easy Koji. But, I know people, I have a friend who makes Koji in his bathtub in his bathroom in Brooklyn and has made it work. And, steams up his bathroom and goes through a whole Koji thing in his bathroom. And I haven't tried to do Koji that way, but I've heard people doing interesting things with the Instant Pot using fermentation. I can't speak to the nature of it in Koji though. So, yeah.
So this particular, if you let that sit for a year, how long can you let it sit
You can go as long as you want. If your goal is 150-year-old Koji that you're going to pass on to 3 generations from now, you can do that, it's really up to you. When I started making miso, what I started doing was I did a couple batches when I realized, ooh, I succeeded and I like this. The next year what I did was I did several batches and I marked them 1 year, 2 years, 6 months, 5 years, and I marked them all and I stashed the ones away, and the ones that I knew I was going to probably enjoy in the next year, I pulled them aside and I let them hang out. So you have that option. It's really up to you if you want a younger miso or a more mature miso. And I think that's kind of what's awesome about it, right?
Is there a point that in which you fail and you're oh, this isn't working out? Is there a 3 month, 6 months this is not?
I I would maybe bail if like I have, you know, neon colors growing on it. I'm definitely gonna chop the whole thing. My rule of thumb is red, black, and neon colors equals dead. Don't eat it. But just because it has regular colored mold doesn't mean it's bad. Scrape it off, it might actually be okay. You know? So, there you go. Yeah, but I wouldn't worry about that. Yes?
Well, if you had one of these super aged, your 50-year miso, how's it different? What changes?
The flavor. I think some things can get, you know, sweeter. I think it depends what kind of beans you use. I think it depends what kind of koji you use, you know? I think the best way to equate it is, you know, miso sort of develops like wine, like I was saying earlier, and it sort of matures with age. And, you know, I mean, there's definitely going to be a point where the sugars and the carbohydrates kind of bottom out. They're not necessarily being as, like, sort of digested at the rate that they were before. But I mean, I think it's really interesting. I've had some really amazing, you know, 3-year misos and 5-year misos from like other people and stuff. So, yeah.
What's the soonest you can use it?
The soonest? Boo-boo. If you want to make 8 years in a month, you can. There'll be action happening, you know, or 3 months, anything like that. You know, I mean, I usually would say 3 months. You know, if you want to do a really quick miso, my suggestion is use beans or nuts. I mean, not beans or nuts. I'm sorry, beans or seeds. I've done a lot of nut misos, pistachios, you know, and other things, you know, sunflower seeds, pecans, peanuts, cashews. You can do misos with that, and you're kind of doing the same exact process. You use a little bit less koji, you use a little bit less salt, and what I actually like to do is I like to blend it all up and pack it in a jar, but I don't salt the jar because I do a short ferment on nuts and seeds. So you can do almost the same process, let it sit for like, you know, 3 days up to a week or so, and have like a nice, quick, like nut or seed miso. And it's really awesome. Yeah.
Also, can you pressure cook the beans?
Yeah, you can totally pressure cook beans. Yeah. Just make sure you're al dente. What was your question?
So 1 year is a long time to wait. How do you
This is the ferment of patience, for sure. What were you going to say?
how do you know you have a good batch during that year?
That's why I like to pop things open and like give it a whiff. I mean, you're never gonna know. You know, like I said, for me, I've almost always had really good success with any kind of heritage bean. You know, cranberry beans, calypso beans, orca beans, you know, adzuki beans and chickpeas. I haven't had especially success with like black beans, pinto beans, lentil kind of stuff. They're good, but I'm kind of like, they're meh in comparison to everything else. I mean, you won't really know. I think that's kind of the magic of it. So do a few batches, get creative, you know, see what happens.
What about sprouted beans?
Well, fava beans?
Sprouted.
Sprouted beans? Yeah, do it. 1 minute! So yeah, nut misos, other things. Okay, you have all this miso. Let's pretend it's a year from now. You're like, bitches, I just made 5 gallons of miso this winter. I'm so inspired. Okay, things to do. Miso cured eggs. Pack the hard-boiled eggs, peel them, pack them in miso, put them in a fridge for a day, scrape it off, rinse them off. You'll be everybody's favorite thing at a party. You know, miso cured egg, miso zuke pickles. You know, figure out how to do miso zuke. Very easy. You know, there's lots of ways to play that. I like to put it in meatloaf, like turkey miso meatloaf and meatballs. You know, salad dressings, fish. You know, time's up. So sad. So you get the idea. So here's the deal. Do I have more Q&A time now?
Maybe a few.
Okay, maybe
4 minutes.
I have 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Yeah, do you guys feel like you can go home and do this at home?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I care about. Great.
Do you have a
Success.
website, like any recipes?
I have a website. It's contrabandferments.com. We are on Instagram and Facebook. We will be revamping our website soon and hopefully be putting up more recipes and things. But I think there are some miso recipes. There's a new book coming out this next year, 2019, by Kirsten and Christopher Shockey. If you guys are familiar with fiery ferments or fermented vegetables, they have a new book coming out on miso, tempeh, natto, and so forth. I have some miso recipes that will be in that book. And we'll be doing a lot of miso workshops this winter in New York City, and a miso alternatives class. So if you're looking to learn to do more about miso and Koji, that's a little bit more of an intermediate class. What other things are important to tell you? I don't know what their title's going to be yet. I don't think they know their title yet. So, but it'll be out next summer. I'm sorry, what?
Who's the book by?
Kirsten and Christopher Shockey. What's your question?
So I think I was a little confused when you said fresh meat. At first, like, you never make miso fresh meat, right? Like, the kind of
I haven't. I always get them dried. So, but I mean, I don't use canned or anything, but I think fresh meats would be really interesting.
and then you will choose those a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe cook them for like a little bit less time, but I think that could be really, I think that would work. I don't see why not. Yeah, play with it. If you have other questions for me, I'll be out there hanging out for a little bit. I have to run and catch a 4 o'clock bus back to New York City. So I have to teach 2 workshops tomorrow. However, but I will be out there for a little bit talking to people. If you're interested, we have a ton of upcoming workshops, our card. If you want to sign up on our mailing list, please do that. And thank you.